Ah. The Gothic farmhouse. Clearly from California, these rocks. And natural geometry. Ah, it's the Vaudoyer, friend I know. House of knowledge, built in a sphere of knowledge. Great sphere here and another there. Falls like a crystal from the moon. Not a bad show. Oh, perhaps I spoke too soon. A very strange use of rock forms, most unfamiliar. But here, the fundaments of architecture are a column. And that is familiar. And here it is, my old collection. How apt in a display of architecture, for is not architecture made of minerals, and should it not follow the natural forms? May I share and show with you these rocks and their joys and fascinations? Please join me. I recognize many old friends and relish the opportunity to renew their acquaintance. They seem to have been well taken care of. I was always fascinated by mineralogy. It was my first interest. When I was but 12 years old, I began a dictionary of mineralogy. The vicissitudes of fate ordained otherwise. My great success at an early age with a book on modern painters. But had life taken another path, I believe I might have become one of the great mineralogists. I would ask you to examine closely. Thank you. But to see clearly is one of the rarest and finest things in the world. Thank you. Here is an old friend indeed. Observe the red oxide of iron as it traverses the flint. I bought it among a heap of flints in a dealer's back shop, having caught sight of the edge of red for 6pence. I cut it into 3, kept the largest piece for myself, which I thought I would not sell even for £5. But I have since given it to the British Museum, where it takes a proud place as number 28 in the illustrative Silicious series, the finest example of jasperine red in silica I have ever seen. Jasper itself is a compact and opaque stone, in substance extremely common, but it owes its occasional preciousness to 3 things: its color, its easy susceptibility to fine polishing, and its mossy or flame-like colorations, delineations that traverse its mass. Scarlet jasper in its rarest and finest condition, an astonishing example. Red jasper in rough grey quartz, with inlets of chalcedony, 2 in perfect straight lines, in between which the material of the jasper flows like the rising tide in a harbour as the water comes through the floodgates. Such appearance of fault and fracture in the rocks seems to me sometimes to be perfect imposture on their part of these unprincipled stones. But I have never actually seen one make itself, so withhold my judgment for the moment. Here, part of the wall of a great vein of quartz. I'm confident it comes from California, with another quartz vein, narrower, compressed within it. The whole decorated with a splendid dispersed moss of crystalline gold. Would you like to hold it with care? There is another, even finer specimen with larger crystals of gold inside, but it seems that someone valuing it for its monetary sake rather than its inherent beauty has decided to remove it. And I don't wish for that to be repeated. Thank you. You may note in this rock the white fault falling into a fissure. It indicates to me that the great contest that makes rocks, the stress and the pressure of mountains, has forced this to happen. The formation of rocks is indeed a curious business. A stone can be seen a mountain in miniature. And the surface of any stone is more interesting, richer in color, more splendid in form than any ordinary hill. Nature, in this way, finds in a piece of stone merely 2 feet in diameter the chance to express all of her majestic varieties of form and shape and color and ornament and fracture that she needs to build her great mountains. Nature also draws herself. Here, nature draws herself as she might using moss for a forest or using crystal edges to show crags. I have always, thinking of mountains among rocks, derived my most intense pleasures among mountains. The first sight of the Alps for me was like a divine revelation, seeing the benevolent will there behind creation. Walking, observing rocks, documenting plants, drawing the wild landscapes of nature are the happiest moments of my life. Just as nature here drew herself on a rock, here have I sought to draw nature in a rock. To draw landscapes truly, one needs to see the surface and what lies beneath the surface. Here, in this rather wonderful drawing, which has been much admired, I sought to draw the shape, the surface, and the soul of the rock, all troubled and trembled like waves caught by a summer breeze. all taught with a febrile energy, like the chords of an Aeolian harp, or like the soft still air of spring, interrupted by the echoes of a child's voice. In my childhood, my father, my mother, and I went every year to the Jura. We traveled often. My parents always fearful for my safety. In Venice, my mother was convinced we would overturn the gondola. At Chamonix, that I would fall down a crevice or into a glacier. In Pisa, my father begged me, what shall I give the coachman? At Florence, he disputed the delicious form of the Duomo. We went every summer to Vevey, the most domestic of all our homes, and well do I remember this fearsome whistling wind as it came down from the Col. At the same time, the merry clattering of knives and forks, a hungry party in the salon. Many of you will have been to Switzerland and may remember the little grey churches that sit, their towering spires falling in to the green field of vine, or sitting on the craggy rocks on either side of the valley. Many unchanged since the 10th and 11th century, and all more beautiful with age. Built from the local stones, left to weather in the wind and the rain, time has made them ever more beautiful. This to me is a principle, and I have happily seen this principle observed by architects whom I modestly advised in the construction of the Oxford Museum of Natural History, recently opened. There, every column is from a different stone, every stone of a different color, every stone from a different place, every capital represents a different animal or a different plant. They have made at Oxford something that doesn't only use the variety and splendor of nature, but displays it in its form, a visual catalogue of the natural world. To return to the stones, crystals do not always form alone, rarely form alone. Two or three will agree at some point which space to give the other, how to retain their own personality, what shapes to form together, and forming together the most wonderful and fantastical things. Here, for example, a perfect piece of crystalline quartz with a friend whom it respects enough to allow a distinct place of its own, a topaz. When in perfect humor, this is how stones behave. Crystals do not always agree to yield. Sometimes they fight furiously for their own place, lose all humor and courtesy and grace, and struggle to form a union. My marriage was such a case. Effie and I reached an accommodation, both agreeing to pursue interests. But it began, she never got along with my parents. They didn't think her a good match, but her father had gone bankrupt, and she was determined to try to protect the family through a good alliance. I'd already begun to doubt the depth of her feeling for me, but felt that it was right to proceed with the offer of marriage, and so we married, and on the wedding night, it was not as I had so fervently hoped. There was something about her. Her person. But we agreed to pursue our own interests. At Venice, I was fully engaged, recording windows, measuring buildings, looking at doorstops, trying to reconcile on the windowsill, banging on doors to get custodians to open palaces and churches, watching the decayed rocks and watching the decaying sculptures all around me, all in the bitter cold, hands chill, throat frozen. Effie, by her own account, the pet and darling of society, amused herself in Venice with entertainments and the opera. We met every morning for breakfast, and we joined each other at night for dinner. She was happy to gad about, rattling away in Italian, a little uncomfortable sometimes at her position as a married woman. I, frostbitten, tormented by the wind, making my next great book, labored among the stones of Venice, but they were glorious stones. At Herne Hill, where we moved, what a difference. It was all about a little blue pill. My mother, ever concerned for my health, insisted that I nightly take a little blue pill for my damaged lungs. Effie, unwilling to accept a mother's natural love for her son, refused to let me take it. She resisted petulantly. I rebuked her. She sulked. It went on and on. And a great rift occurred between us. Picture this. We have moved to a little cottage in Norwood where I can proceed to complete my work. Quiet was essential to me. Entertainment, it seemed, was essential to her. Effie is looking abstractedly out of the window. John? What are you looking at, Effie? Effie? Nothing. What are you thinking then, says John. Effie? A great many things. Parties and operas and excitement and a great many things. Tell me about them, says John. Well, they are a great many things. John says, what are you thinking then? And what conclusions have you drawn? And Effie says, I have drawn no conclusions because you interrupted me. Here is a rock that shows all of these differences and difficulties when things are not in good temper. Here is a perfect, or what would have been a perfect, milky quartz, all covered with carbonate of iron and spatterings of zinc, and quite deformed and blemished. Such is the pattern of crystals that do not get on together. Here is a perfect crystal, quartz, showing its mode of growth, quite unpolished and completely genuine, and in it, the towers of the churches, the columns of the natural architecture begin to appear, entirely wonderful and beautiful. Again, here, known as a fortification agate, are the bastions of a great fortification and the arches of a Gothic church in red, and all these colours colliding, colour upon colour, place upon place, in a wonderful natural harmony. And here, in blue agate, of a gorgeous blue, the tiniest miniature rose window from a Gothic church inscribed within. And here, the buttresses, the towers, the masses of a great cathedral. Yes, had fate taken another path, I think I would have been the greatest mineralogist. And yet, my contribution has not been negligible. From these stones, with their precise interiors, have I learned the great exteriors of nature, and to learn to live in harmony with nature. Nature is where we live. Do anything and think first. Go to nature. Reject nothing. Select nothing. Scorn nothing. Go to nature. Thank you.